She was simply walking home an ordinary evening, a familiar route, a seemingly safe neighborhood. Yet, those few minutes marked the beginning of one of the most shocking stories to shake the United Kingdom. Sarah Everard's disappearance not only unsettled the nation but forced millions of women to confront the fragility of their own safety. But hey race, what makes this story even scarier, the prime suspect turned out to be no ordinary person. He was someone we trust with our safety. Imagine what happens when a cop becomes a killer. What truly happened that evening? Why did this crime ripple beyond one family to impact an entire country? Most importantly, how did we let it happen? Stay with us to uncover the full truth. This is not just a story of tragedy, it is one that touches all of us. Sarah Everard, a young woman with a radiant smile and ambitious dreams, lived in London, where she worked in marketing. Friends and colleagues described her as warm-hearted and effortlessly sociable. Originally from Yorkshire, Sarah moved to the capital to embark on a new chapter, building her career while savoring the vibrant life of the big city. Among her loved ones, Sarah was known for her reliability and willingness to help. She adored outdoor strolls, especially around London's picturesque areas like Clapham Common, near her home. Active and kind-hearted, Sarah was the type of person who would always call first to wish someone well and offer encouragement during tough times. By early March 2021, life was carrying on as usual. Like many, Sarah worked from home due to the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic but made time for walks and catching up with friends. These seemingly mundane moments would soon become the critical details of a tragic story that would shake the nation. The first hints of spring were in the air on March 3rd, as Sarah headed out for dinner with a friend. No one could have imagined it would be her last evening. She was one of millions of Londoners who took reasonable precautions in their daily routines. Sarah chose well-lit, busy routes, wore bright clothing to remain visible, and kept her phone within reach. Yet, a city that seemed safe and predictable held hidden dangers. What began with Sarah Everard's disappearance would evolve into a case that raised urgent questions about women's safety and trust in the justice system. That evening, after leaving her friend's apartment in Clapham around 9 p.m., Sarah started her usual walk home, a route she knew well. It was a 50-minute walk through familiar streets and past Clapham Common, where streetlights created an illusion of safety. She spoke to her boyfriend on the phone for about 15 minutes, assuring him she'd be home soon. Tragically, she never arrived. When Sarah failed to return or answer messages by midnight, her friends grew alarmed. Those who knew her habits found her silence uncharacteristic. By the next morning, the worry deepened. Sarah was always considerate; she would notify others if her plans changed, but now, her phone was unreachable. Her friends were the first to notice her absence, retracing her likely routes and contacting hospitals in search of clues. Family members joined the search, and when it became clear their efforts were in vain, they reported her disappearance to the police. London's police acted swiftly, launching a missing persons investigation. Initial steps included interviewing witnesses, reviewing CCTV footage along Sarah's route, and analyzing her phone records. Local residents responded to calls for assistance, spreading the word through social media and community groups. By March 4th, the case was gaining traction. CCTV captured Sarah near Clapham Common around 9:30 p.m., and she was later spotted on a nearby street, the last known sighting. Over the following days, her disappearance became national news, igniting widespread public concern. By March 5, 2021, the investigation had escalated. London's police increased their efforts, with Sarah's face and details broadcast across major news channels and social media platforms. Volunteers shared appeals far and wide, urging anyone with information to come forward. Police units combed the Clapham Common area and surrounding neighborhoods, searching parks, alleyways, and abandoned buildings. Meanwhile, investigators meticulously reviewed tips from the public. Though some leads proved false, every detail was thoroughly examined. The primary focus remained on piecing together Sarah's movements after her last CCTV appearance. The tragedy that unfolded next would leave an indelible mark not just on Sarah's loved ones but on an entire nation. Witness interviews yielded the first crucial lead. Several locals reported seeing a woman matching Sarah's description on Pointers Road around 9:35 p.m. One passerby mentioned spotting a car nearby that seemed suspicious, though he initially dismissed it. This detail would later prove pivotal in solving the case. Meanwhile, Sarah's family, devastated by her disappearance, traveled to London to join the search. Her mother, father, and brother appeared in media interviews, pleading with anyone who might have information to come forward. Their emotional appeals resonated deeply, mobilizing public support. Volunteers distributed flyers and patrolled the area, hoping to find clues or belongings that might lead to Sarah. Investigators increasingly leaned toward the theory that Sarah had fallen victim to a crime. Her vanishing without a trace on the well-lit streets of London defied expectations. This suspicion grew stronger after reviewing CCTV footage, which showed no evidence of Sarah deviating from her route or changing direction. Police began cross-referencing criminal databases for individuals with a history of offenses who might have been in the Clapham Common area that night. By March 6, tensions escalated as authorities issued a public appeal for help identifying a vehicle spotted near Sarah's last known location. Events unfolded at a chilling pace, yet key evidence remained elusive, and time was running against the investigation. On the morning of March 7, 2021, police focused their efforts on analyzing additional CCTV footage from Clapham Common and surrounding streets. One camera captured a suspicious vehicle, a Vauxhall Astra, seen circling the area multiple times and moving slowly, as if its driver were observing someone. This footage became a significant lead. Simultaneously, more witness reports emerged. Some locals mentioned a strange man seen in the area late on March 3. Though descriptions were vague, investigators followed every detail. Officers conducted door-to-door inquiries, seeking anyone who might have seen Sarah or noticed unusual activity that night. Expanding the search beyond London, investigators examined vehicle movement data captured by traffic cameras. They discovered that the car of interest had left the city and headed toward Kent. This revelation heightened suspicions that Sarah's disappearance involved abduction. On March 8, a breakthrough transformed the investigation. A CCTV recording from outside London showed a woman resembling Sarah entering a car matching the description of the suspicious vehicle. Though the driver's face was indistinguishable, the license plate led authorities to the car's owner Wayne Couzens, a serving officer in London's Metropolitan Police. The discovery that the prime suspect was a police officer sent shockwaves to the public and the police force itself. Couzens, assigned to a specialist unit protecting diplomatic premises, was in a position of trust. His role added complexity to the investigation, requiring utmost discretion to prevent leaks or interference. By March 9, investigators used mobile phone data to trace Couzens' movements on the night Sarah disappeared. This analysis directed them to an area near Ashford in Kent, which became the focus of search teams. Search warrants executed at Couzens' home uncovered potentially incriminating evidence, including clothing and electronic devices. These items formed part of the growing body of evidence linking him to Sarah's disappearance. On the morning of March 9, 2021, Wayne Couzens was arrested at his home in Deal, Kent. The operation involved extensive searches of his property and surrounding areas. Police confirmed that his movements on the night of Sarah's disappearance coincided with the location of the vehicle captured on CCTV. Evidence gathered during the investigation further corroborated suspicions against him. From the outset of his arrest, Couzens behaved oddly. He admitted being in the Clapham Common area on March 3 but provided disjointed and contradictory explanations. He claimed he had personal errands but failed to offer coherent details. Searches of his home uncovered several troubling items, including plastic wrapping and accessories that could have been used to restrain someone. Meanwhile, police intensified their focus on the wooded area near Ashford, guided by phone tracking data and Couzens' route history. Forensic teams and volunteers scoured the site, hoping to find evidence or traces of Sarah. Tragically, on March 10, search teams discovered human remains in a wooded area near the location identified in the investigation. The condition of the body delayed immediate identification, but the clothing and other signs strongly suggested it was Sarah. The remains were transported for forensic examination to confirm the identity and determine the cause of death. That day marked a turning point in the investigation. On March 12, DNA analysis officially confirmed that the remains belonged to Sarah Everard. For her family and friends, the news was a devastating blow. Police also confirmed that her death was the result of violent actions. From this moment, the case was classified as a murder. The charges against Wayne Couzens began forming a coherent narrative, making him the primary suspect. The revelation that a trusted law enforcement officer was implicated in such a heinous crime shocked the public to its core. Sarah's family issued a heartfelt statement, expressing gratitude to everyone involved in the search efforts and calling for justice. Meanwhile, investigators continued gathering additional evidence to ensure a successful prosecution. After his arrest, Wayne Couzens was brought to a police station for questioning. Initially, he remained calm but avoided direct answers. Investigators focused on reconstructing his actions on the night of March 3, but his testimony was inconsistent and contradictory. He soon refused further cooperation, citing exhaustion, forcing the police to temporarily halt the interrogation. Simultaneously, forensic experts completed their analysis of the evidence collected during searches. Among the items seized were builders' bags, duct tape, and fibers that potentially linked to the location where Sarah's body was found. These materials became critical components of the growing case against Couzens. The following day, interrogations resumed. Detectives honed in on Couzens' movements, confirming he had rented a car several days before Sarah's disappearance and used it to travel from London to Kent. Traffic camera footage, mobile phone records, and vehicle data corroborated that Couzens was driving the car in which Sarah was believed to have been taken. Under mounting pressure, Couzens changed his narrative, claiming he had been forced to abduct Sarah under threats from a group of Eastern European criminals. However, investigators quickly identified the story as fabrication. The account was riddled with inconsistencies, and further evidence disproved the involvement of any third party. Forensic examination of the rented vehicle revealed traces of Sarah's DNA in the trunk, providing irrefutable proof of her presence in the car. Investigators also uncovered that Couzens had exploited his position as a police officer to deceive Sarah into getting into his vehicle. CCTV footage captured the moment he stopped her under the pretense of enforcing COVID-19 lockdown regulations. Using his police credentials, he gained her trust, leading her into a fatal trap. As the case against Couzens solidified, investigators worked to establish his motives and the precise sequence of events. During further questioning, he continued to alter his statements, attempting to evade responsibility. However, the accumulating evidence left little room for maneuver. On March 10, 2021, the police concentrated their efforts on a wooded area near Ashford, Kent, based on mobile phone data indicating Couzens had spent significant time there on the night of Sarah's disappearance. Forensic teams, K9 units, and volunteers equipped with thermal imaging devices and drones scoured the area. By midday, a search team discovered Sarah's body in a ravine, concealed in garbage bags. The condition of the remains suggested she had been there for several days. Forensic specialists meticulously documented the scene to preserve critical evidence. This discovery marked the culmination of days of tireless investigative work. The body was immediately transported for autopsy. Preliminary findings suggested strangulation as the cause of death, an assertion made even before DNA results confirmed the identity. On March 12, DNA analysis officially identified the remains as Sarah Everard. Additional key evidence surfaced. At the crime scene, police discovered items of Sarah's clothing previously unaccounted for. Fiber and DNA analysis linked these items to the car rented by Couzens, further cementing his involvement. Investigators determined that after abducting Sarah, Couzens had taken her to Kent, where she was held for several hours before being killed. Using knowledge from his police training, he attempted to conceal his crime by selecting a remote woodland location, hoping the body would remain undiscovered. Thanks to meticulous police work, his efforts failed. The discovery of Sarah's body and the confirmation of her identity sent shockwaves across the nation. Public grief manifested in vigils, with flowers and candles placed in Sarah's memory. Social media campaigns with hashtags like #JusticeForSarah and #ReclaimTheStreets highlighted the urgent need to address women's safety and systemic flaws within law enforcement. Sarah's family issued a heartfelt statement, expressing their gratitude for the police's efforts and the overwhelming public support. Their grief and anguish were palpable in every word, and their call for justice became a rallying cry for thousands. Amid mounting public pressure, Wayne Couzens became the central figure in one of the most high-profile investigations in UK history. The evidence gathered against him formed the foundation of formal charges. On March 13, 2021, Wayne Couzens was officially charged with the kidnapping and murder of Sarah Everard. Prosecutors presented a robust case, including mobile phone data, CCTV footage, DNA evidence, and witness testimonies. These elements became the cornerstone of the prosecution's case, which soon moved to trial. The first court hearing took place on March 16. Appearing via video link, Couzens seemed subdued. He entered a plea of not guilty, and his defense team began challenging the evidence. However, the strength of the prosecution's case made it a formidable task to counter. The trial garnered immense public attention. Journalists covered every detail, while hundreds gathered outside the court, demanding justice. The fact that Couzens, a serving police officer, was the defendant made the crime even more egregious. As more details emerged, the case took on an even darker tone. It became evident that Couzens had meticulously planned his actions. He rented a car, gathered materials for the abduction, and exploited pandemic-related restrictions to lure Sarah into his vehicle. Posing as a law enforcement officer enforcing COVID-19 regulations, he used his badge and authority to gain Sarah's trust, a betrayal that proved fatal. Forensic analysis confirmed that Sarah's death was caused by strangulation. Evidence found in Couzens' home, car, and at the crime scene matched the prosecution's timeline of events. Items such as plastic wrapping used to restrain Sarah and her clothing further implicated him. During the trial, it emerged that Couzens had a history of inappropriate behavior that had gone unaddressed by police oversight mechanisms. This revelation sparked outrage and calls for systemic reform within law enforcement. Public demands extended beyond convicting Couzens to holding the system accountable for its failures. On September 30, 2021, the court delivered its verdict: life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. This sentence reflected the severity of the crime and the profound breach of public trust. The judge emphasized that Couzens' actions had undermined the fundamental relationship between citizens and the police, necessitating the harshest punishment. For Sarah's family, the verdict offered some solace, though their lives would never be the same. They expressed hope that Sarah's story would serve as a lesson to prevent similar tragedies in the future. Following the sentencing, the UK was swept by a wave of public outrage. The murder of Sarah Everard by a police officer ignited a nationwide reckoning on women's safety and trust in law enforcement. Protests and vigils began in London and quickly spread across the country. One of the largest movements was #ReclaimTheStreets, which united thousands of women demanding greater protection from violence and systemic reforms. The movement's central message that women have the right to move freely and safely at all times resonated deeply. The phrase "it could have been any of us" became a powerful symbol of solidarity, highlighting the pervasive threat of violence against women. The protests also cast a spotlight on police accountability. Many question how someone like Couzens, with a history of complaints, could remain in the force. Revelations of prior allegations against him, which had been overlooked, fueled calls for an overhaul of police oversight. The public demanded an acknowledgement of systemic failures and decisive action to prevent future abuses. Under mounting societal pressure, Home Secretary Preeti Patel announced an independent inquiry into the circumstances that allowed Cousins to remain in his position. Reforms were introduced, including stricter vetting procedures for police recruits and improved mechanisms for investigating complaints against officers. Additionally, initiatives to enhance street lighting and expand CCTV coverage were launched. Efforts also focused on improving police-community relations. Authorities pledged greater transparency in law enforcement operations and accountability for misconduct. Educational programs aimed at addressing discrimination and violence within the police force were rolled out. Sarah's family supported the public movement, stating that their daughter's memory should inspire change. They expressed hope that her death would catalyze a transformation, making society safer for everyone. Sarah's legacy became a rallying point for countless women who began sharing their own experiences of violence, breaking the silence and challenging the stigma surrounding such issues. However, alongside calls for change, sharp divisions emerged. Authorities faced criticism for their response to protests, particularly after police dispersed a peaceful vigil in London, citing breaches of pandemic restrictions. The forceful actions sparked a new wave of outrage and ignited debates over the right to assemble and the freedom to protest. Sarah's story remained a potent symbol of why systemic transparency is vital and why citizens must be protected from all forms of violence, including that perpetrated by those entrusted with upholding the law. Her tragedy became a profound societal lesson and a catalyst for efforts to make life safer for women across the UK. Sarah Everard's death left an indelible mark on her family, friends, and millions around the world. Her name became a symbol of the fight for women's safety and justice, inspiring a wave of social initiatives in her memory. In March 2021, just weeks after her tragic death, vigils were held in London and other cities. One of the most poignant was an unsanctioned gathering at Clapham Common, near the site of Sarah's abduction. People arrived with flowers, candles, photos, letters, and signs demanding change. Despite strict police measures aimed at preventing large gatherings due to pandemic restrictions, thousands came together to honor Sarah. The Everard family expressed gratitude for the support they received during their darkest hours. They established a charitable foundation in Sarah's name, dedicated to funding programs that assist victims of violence and promote educational initiatives on women's safety. The fund quickly gained public attention and support from major organizations. Long-term projects inspired by Sarah's story began to take shape. One such initiative focused on creating safe walking routes in major UK cities, featuring enhanced lighting, CCTV coverage, and emergency call points. Another involved mobile apps enabling real-time reporting of suspicious activity. These initiatives aimed to ensure that public spaces felt safer for everyone. Sarah's tragic death also brought attention to broader issues of violence against women. This momentum pushed the government to consider and enact stricter laws addressing sexual violence and harassment. New measures included tougher penalties for stalking and stronger safeguards against abuses of power by law enforcement officials. In 2022, a memorial bench was installed at Clapham Common in Sarah's memory. The inscription on its backrest read, "In memory of Sarah Everard and in support of every woman who deserves the right to feel safe." This modest but poignant tribute became a place of reflection for those wishing to honor her legacy. Sarah's story shifted public consciousness, serving as a stark reminder of the need to combat violence rooted in inequality and misuse of authority. Her name now stands not only as a symbol of a tragic loss but as a rallying call for change, inspiring people worldwide to advocate for safer, fairer societies.